welcome back to Iron Archery Outdoors, guys. So, been talking about it for a little bit, and how I talked about before about that I'd be getting Ultra arrows and some other stuff. And so I got some Ultra arrows in, and I've been, hearing a lot of hype about them. Levi Morgan's been shooting for quite some time. So they really started to draw my attention. So I built the setup for my buddy's wife. And this was kind of a whole new build for me. Not really, but the reason I'm saying that is because everything I used in this arrow build, I have never touched until tonight. So, I'm going to give you my first impression, my first impressions on these arrows, what I used, why I used them, and my finished thoughts. So, I'm going to start right now. The Ultra arrows, right off the bat, I guess, I'll start with. So, these are the ones I'm going to be running for mine. These other ones are just a different version. But right off the bat, the packaging's nice. I mean, it's an arrow box. But, I mean it's not like Ultra Views where go way up above and beyond, whatever. But it's a nice package. A lot of detail, a lot of information. You got back of the spine charts, which is, I've seen some boxes that don't even have this on the box. You got to go on the website to find it. So you got that stuff here. They got recommendations how to judge your spines, or if you're going to go up in a spine as far as insert weight, stuff like that. Just a nice overall package. It'll be a black box for the limited series, which is your .003s, and your premier series, which is the .001. So, and that's in the Phantoms. It's the same with the Centrums, which are a 204. Which they make them in a 166, which is your 4mm, your 5mm 204, your 246, a 23, 25, and a 27, I believe. Those are all in the Centrum line. And they have your Premier and your Limited in both of those. But there's nothing offered in a .006 like the RIP TKO. I think it's the Gamers or the Sports. I think it's the Sports, the red ones. But on that side, so the first thing I did is I pulled one out of the box, and I wanted to do a dynamic spine test, which a dynamic spine test is applying pressure to both ends. So why do we do this? It's simulating the arrow being shot. So you're inducing flex into the arrow to find a stiff and a weak spine. So essentially what you want to happen, or what you want, is when your arrow is shot, ideally you want your arrow to flex down into your rest, supporting the arrow. Okay. Now, if you're shooting and your arrow's flexing up when it's shot, that's exactly what's happening. It's lifting up, which means that arrow is coming off of your arrow rest. Your arrow rest ain't doing anything at that point. Okay? Mind you, you're never going to see this unless it is in a slow motion camera. Okay? So, dynamic test, what you're doing is you're applying pressure to both ends. Okay? To get the arrow to flex under pressure. Is it identical to shooting through a bow? No. But is it simulating the same thing? Yes. Okay. Just because you find a stiff and a weak spine in a dynamic test, it might not be the same when you go to Noctune. It might not be. But a lot of times it's going to get you really close. Okay. But so what I found in these arrows, I kind of half expected it, but at the same time I was kind of I don't know what the word I'm looking for. Intrusive about it, maybe. Might not be the right word for it, but I mean, I'm a hunter and an iron worker, so I'm not into all of verbal words as much. But I had my thoughts about it, but what I found when I put pressure on both of these ends, I was slightly humbled. So reason being that is when I put pressure on these, I got, your down pressure to get the arrow to flex down, okay? But what I found was kind of interesting. So when you do this, when you apply pressure to both ends, you rotate it a little bit each time, okay? I like doing like 45 to 90 degrees each time just to kind of really pick apart that spine where it's going to go. Well, I went around both. I even spun it 2 different ways, okay? But I rotated it 45 to 90 degrees each time, pressed it, released it, rotated a little bit, pressed it, released it, all the way around. I went around 2 or 3 times. And I'm not even joking. Aside from that arrow going straight down, it maybe veered off from a straight down path. I'm going to say maybe 10 degrees-ish, either way, to the left, to the right, or straight down. Every single time. I was kind of shocked. I have never, ever done a dynamic spine test and an arrow do that, ever. I mean, I'm talking between Rip TKOs, Gold Tip Air Strikes, Pierce Platinums, the old school Victory Rips, Victory HLRs, Easton 5.0s, Easton 6.5s. The arrows I use for trads are the Easton Legacy, Fred Eichler edition. They're a 5 mil. They have their Legacy, the standard Legacy, which is, I believe, is a 246, if I remember right. Like your standard hunting arrow, or arrow in general. I think nowadays, the standard is more of a 5 mil than a 246, personally. But, so, that I'm doing, all those arrows are all good arrows. They all will shoot just as good as you're gonna let yourself shoot, ideally. I mean, I've shot Rip TKOs for several years. I have 0 complaints with the arrows. They're a great GPI to be able to adjust front of centers, to get good point weights. They're a good, durable arrow. I mean, I've hit some pretty hard stuff, and nothing happened. I mean, I've shot them into hardwood, oaks, not purposely, but, sometimes you just forget to move your sight, or you just plain miss a target. It happens. But shoved them into trees, and it literally took 3-4 guys all on arrow to pull that thing out of there, and it was fine. List goes on, but anyway, no complaints on any of those arrows. They're all good arrows. They've all proven themselves over the years. But when I started to catch wind on how consistent these Ultras were, I started to kind of lean toward them a little bit. And so finally, I'm like, you know what? It's January when I ordered them. It's February now. But I'm like, all right, I'm going to get some arrows, and I'm going to test these things. So this is a whole new thing for me, really, because I've never actually shot a 4mm arrow. Your 166. I've never shot one. I shouldn't say I've never shot one, but I've never legitimately ran them out of my bows. I've always been a really big 5mm guy, mainly because you can get a good GPI. They're generally lighter than a 4mm. But on that spectrum, a 4mm spined right and stuff like that are generally a little bit more durable per spine. So that was kind of another thing I kind of dive into a little bit. But getting more involved into the long-range shooting, which I've been involved with longer-range shooting for quite some time, but as far as a different extent, as far as like beast mode archeries, they're mostly around Wisconsin. They might branch out a little bit in the Midwest, I'm not really sure, but mostly in Wisconsin I know of. Shooting those total archery challenges, we all know you can get into some long shots, 120 yards, 130 yards, even a little bit farther sometimes. And I love shooting long distance, so a 4mm just made sense to me. At that point, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get less air resistance on the shaft, which potentially means from a 5mm to a 4mm, the exact same weight and same vane configuration, stuff like that, you generally might see a little bit more range on your yardage tapes. So that kind of drew a little attention too. And less wind drift because it's just a skinnier shaft than a 5mm. So, on that note, going into the arrow build itself, okay? So as I did the dynamic test, I couldn't pick out a legit spot. I mean, if it was picking a very minute spot, whether it's going to be slightly off this side or just a little bit over onto the other, just, I mean, you're looking at a range of of a dynamic test within like that little spot on the top of rotating that arrow back and forth. Very minimal, very minimal. I mean, I'm not blowing air up anybody's wazoo. I mean, like I said, I have never pressed an arrow that did what these did, ever. If I was to pick anyone that was probably relatively close, would probably be the Victory HLR. I haven't had any experience with the new, I think it's the VLR, but and I think they might have one other one too, but those could be similar too. But the HLRs, I mean, they were pretty defined. I shouldn't say defined because they still had an actual spine, but where they had their spine aligned marks was pretty close. But as far as these, I mean, there's no spine line marks, no nothing. They're supposed to be spineless technology. And I pressed 3 or 4 different shafts and just random picked them out of the box, and they all did the same thing. Literally every one of them went down. None of them went to the side or up or nothing. They went down. Weird odds, I don't know. But was really cool. So I'm like, you know what? I watched a Facebook reel of Levi Morgan talking about that he doesn't really even need to knock tune them. Maybe it's just an advertisement thing. I don't know. But after seeing what I seen in a dynamic test, I don't think 99% of the people could shoot the difference if you knock tune them or not. So that's on that. So going back into the build. So I built this build. So my buddy's wife is shooting, I'm not sure what bow she's shooting, but she's like 42-ish, 43-ish pounds, like 25-inch draw. So I'm like, perfect. This would be a really cool test because my wife has pretty much the same specs. So if I decided to get some for her, I would already know what I'm diving into. And so the whole new arrow build to me is what I did, is we decided, because I was going to shoot these on my arrows, and I'm like, hey, I really recommend these. I've been watching a lot of stuff about them. A lot of in-depth conversations, a lot of podcasts to do with these, whatever. And I really liked the design and everything that's behind it. So I went and tried them. The DCA mini sabers. I'm going to start right off the bat with these, as I was thoroughly impressed with these. They're a pretty nice malleable material. But what caught me right away was if you pinch this vein, nothing. There's like zero memory in these things. I literally took one and set a book on it for like 5 minutes, took it up, and it was like within seconds it was back to like normal. Super cool. But the thing I really loved about these is the glue valley. These glue valleys are like a perfect round, nice little thing. But the cool part is these edges are not stiff. They're not like really robust like a tack vein. I hate the tack vein glue valleys because you got to smash that thing down in order to get that thing to seat all the way. Okay? These glued on absolutely amazing. I absolutely love these valleys. Super awesome. So hats off to, I don't remember his last name, but his name's Kyle, the owner of DCA. I hope you see this video because first impression of these veins, you knocked them out of the park. The material, apparently the material of these veins is like similar to the same stuff they use in a golf ball. That's my thoughts when I heard that too. Super cool video. There's a video on that with Podium Archer and Kyle from DCA. It's a pretty long podcast, so don't schedule it to be a short video because it'll take some time, but it's a super cool video. Super cool guy. Like, dude runs this stuff out of his house, and he's the only guy that packs them, so it's super nice. I love little guys like that because it's just more meaningful to me rather than some big factory just pounding out veins and whatever. They don't care. Okay. Guys like Kyle, where they design these veins, I mean, that's his life, man. He loves the sport and he's passionate about what he's doing. He's a fluid engineer and he's knocking it out of the park. These veins are absolutely awesome. So down to that. So I'm using the mini sabers. And another thing I want to try, a lot of hype about it, probably about everybody that's probably going to see this video that's somewhat into archery and hobbies and part of the bow tuning group on Facebook. If you're not, go check it out. There's a lot of good stuff on there. Is this Bob Smith glue. So I've watched the hypes, and so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give it a try. First thoughts on this, I really like it. It's got a really good tip on it. The stuff seemed to bond really well. The dry time is respectable. It ain't like super fast like a Mold Z glue by Triggered Archery. Don't get me wrong, I still love that stuff. It is absolutely, in my opinion, the strongest vein glue you can put on a vein on the market, hands down. I've done the test like he does on his videos. It ain't no hoax. That stuff is insane. But I do like a little bit thicker glue. That way it's not so runny when you're putting it on your vein and then putting it in a jig. You're not worried about it running down, whatever. So hats off to whoever Bob Smith stuff is. I really like it, and I'm probably gonna keep using it for a while. Down that line, I used these Ultra Arrow glue-in tips, which I have some here, which are going to be the ones I have in mind. These are the 80 grain ones in these arrows. But I'll show you what they look like. These are all a solid 416 stainless piece, and I was actually really impressed. This is a 120 grain tip. So the nice thing about the 166 component is obviously to get the weight, you need to go longer. So I love long components in my arrows because the longer this component is, the more durable the front of the arrow is going to be. And you know, this piece is probably close to 3 inches, I would say, pretty darn close, 2.5, 3 inches. And so really, it's a cool design, and I love the fact that they put the knurled ends on these, on the end of this, where you can kind of see that. That really helps that tip bind in the arrow and doesn't get slippery. And then they got these big valleys on the big valleys on the tip, or on the shank of this tip here. So glue can set in there, really helps lock that tip in the shaft. So I really like the design of this, and they are threaded in the back for extra weights if you want to bump up the weight on them. So this is 120 grain. That's going to be going in my arrow. And like I said, they offer them an 80, 100, and 120 grain glue-in tips. So this is an 80 grain. And this one that I built for her is a 500 spine. These are a 6.2 GPI. So this sucker is light. Okay. And the DCA mini sabers come in, they say 6.1. I got around 5.8 to 5.9 on my last chance scale. So could be just variance to scale. But anyway, lighter the better. Anyway, so the knocks were right about 6-ish, 6.3, something like that. 6.1, 6.2 I think what I had. But this total arrow build, mind you, this is a pretty short arrow. She's like 25-inch draw or something like that. But this total arrow right here, carbon to carbon, is 23 1/8. And this whole arrow came out at 248 grains with a 80 grain tip. This came out to be 14.2% FOC. So that was pretty sweet to see that. And spin testing these are the 3000s, the .003. These are the Phantom Limited. And these will be black right here as the Phantom Premier, the .0001 or .001 are white. Okay. So this arrow, all these arrows spun very well for that. The overall construction of the tips, I mean, they nailed it out of the park with everything. Everything's very sleek, very matches very well, spins extremely well. I'm gonna do some testing with their Ultra Nox. I mean, I think they'll do pretty good. I like the design. They're nice and beefy. They're not like really skinny or nothing. So, I mean, they're a little more hardy at the shaft, which is nice because it'll help take a little more of the force when you shoot them. They're not like really tapered down. So I think they'll hold up pretty good. But we'll see. I mean, I might lean back to the IP4 knock. The reason being is I have a lot of history with an IP5 knock, and I love the IP5 knock. But so this is an IP4, and if you notice, the Ultra knock kind of tapers a little bit, which is fine, but can be a slight issue, maybe, when setting your soft knots when you're putting your loop in. But maybe not. But I just, because it kind of keeps ramping up a little bit here, and I could just see that potentially being a thing. But that's what I like about the IP knocks, is they don't taper. They're straight. Okay, so knock fitment with the IP knocks has been absolutely awesome. I have never prematurely broke one of these, the IP5s. So for me, they've been extremely durable knocks. And they got a little bit of flex to them, so they got a little bit of give for certain things, whatever. Not super stiff like Easton knocks. I tend to see those really stiff, and I've seen more of them crack than a lot of them. These, they seem a little bit stiffer, but they got a little give, so they might be pretty good. But I think I'm probably gonna end up running the IP5 just because I don't like the tape. Not really a big fan of the tapered style of these Ultra knocks, but we'll see. But like I said, the IP knocks have been super good, and I shoot them at high poundage. I mean, I'm shooting. When I shot TAC this year, I was running like 83 pounds with a 405 grain RIP TKO, and I mean, I shot the living daylights out of those arrows. And I mean, all year I shot a lot of arrows. And I mean, I probably shot the same knock thousands of times, but yeah. Anyway, going on to that is this overall build between my build's gonna be pretty much the same, except I'll be using the Premier series with the same veins, with a wrap and 120 grain glue in, and I think it's gonna be a stellar arrow, I think. And I fletched these all up at 2 degree offset to the right. So that's another subject with left and right helicals. Doesn't matter, clocking, all that stuff. I'm going to stay right now. Clocking is absolutely a waste of time because there is no proof of anything that it makes a difference. I know there's a handful of people that have their thoughts on John Dudley, because he can be a little arrogant at times, from what I've heard. I've never met him in person, but I really don't care, because the dude has been around a long time, and honestly, without some of the stuff that he has done, and tests and all that stuff, I mean, stuff might not be where it is. Like, you look at all the Easton spine chart stuff, Dudley was all behind that. He literally designed these spine charts on Easton arrows, and a lot of other stuff. And the dude is an absolute, he's a dead eye. He is super good at what he does, and there's a dang good reason why he does it. So, onto that, was he did a test with clocking the arrows. I take that back, with left and right helicals. He fletched up a handful of arrows, left and right helicals, same degrees, everything like that. Shot him, I believe it was 70 meters, and literally both groups were like this. So, take it for what you have it. The only time, really, a left or right helical makes a difference is a single bevel broadhead. That's literally it. Okay, so if you have a right bevel, a right bevel on a single bevel head, you want to shoot a right helical. That way they're both pushing the same. Okay, now if you have a left bevel, single bevel, and a right helical, that's actually one of the tests that I'm going to do, because I want to find out what does that actually do? What's that actually harming? You know, how far can you really shoot with it before it really starts to take over or really start to affect it? Okay, but other than that, if you're really debating on, well, my arrow's clocked to left, so I'm going to fletch left. Okay, do whatever you want to do, but you're wasting your time with clocking and worrying about which way you're going to fletch your arrows. Okay, because it doesn't matter if you pick a left helical or a right helical. All the fletching jigs are the same price, whether it's left or right. Okay, just a variance on what jig you buy. Okay, so going to that, if you want to shoot a right helical, which your arrow's spinning to the right. Okay, think of it as righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Okay, essentially, as your arrow is spinning to the right, it hits the target, it is technically tightening your arrow, or your tip. Okay, and with a lefty-loosey, essentially, as it hits the target with a little bit of rotation in there, it's technically trying to loosen your tip. So, I mean, look at it that way. Obviously, with a glue-in tip like this, you're never going to have loose tips. So that's a big plus. You know how annoying that gets when you're walking around a couple days at a shoot and you got arrows rattling in your quiver, you know, in your hip quiver or whatever, and you're shooting the same 2 arrows the whole time because you just don't swap it out, whatever. And you go to grab one of the other arrows and your tip's not on there. And you're thinking, what the heck? I didn't put one on here? I know it's on here. And then you tip your quiver upside down and your tip falls out. Okay? We've probably all been there. Whatever. But yeah, so with glue-in tips, you don't have that problem. So that'll be really cool. And I think it's just going to be more robust too. I'm going to try to do a little digging. I mean, it's probably not going to be super ideal, but I'm trying to figure out another 166 that I can get that's a little bit bigger, some way that I can accommodate some sort of a collar on the front of it with a glue-in tip. I think that would be super cool. But I did find knock collars for these. So if you're interested in that, what am I doing? Oh boy. I don't even know where I put them now. Nope. 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 That's not cool. I don't even know what the bag is. But anyway. So the knock collars I found are these little dudes right here. And they're made by Easton. So I did some checking. The 250 spine Phantom Ultra Arrow is, I believe it was a .244 OD. 0.243, somewhere in there. It's really close. So I went on the Easton's website, found an arrow that was about the same and what they recommended for a knock collar size. And that's what I got. And they fit nice. There's a tiny bit in there, but it's fine because I'm going to probably put some hot melt on there anyway, so that'll even it out. And then you just jam your knock in the backside of it. 1 second. Sorry about that. I thought I turned the heater off. But anyway, so then you just put it in the back, just like that. So I'll give the backside of the arrow a little bit more durability as far as hitting the end of your nock with another arrow and not chipping the side of your arrow. So I'm going to play with those a little bit. And they're super light. So the guys are worried about FOC. These are 3 grains. Okay. So the guys get super worried about all the FOC stuff. Whatever. Do what you want. Put a little more glue on your front of your tip, then make up 3 grains, I guess. But I'm not overly worried about it because it's not worth that worried about. It's not like I'm throwing 25 grain collar on the back of this thing. But anyway, so on that line of it, just a couple options you can do is if you're interested in putting a knock collar on a Formula arrow, Easton has collars. Gold tip might. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure on that. But on that is an option for stuff. But overall, I think these arrows are going to be very, very, very pleasing. They're super consistent, and you spin them in your hand, and I mean, everything is so nice. I mean that there's zero wobble in any of these things. When I spun them all, when I glued in the tips, spun all the arrows, and I mean they were absolute lasers. Super, super straight. So on that side of it, I think another thing you could probably show you guys, I might have a piece here. I think these are a 250. Or cut off a 250, I think. Maybe a 300. this is definitely a 250 spine. I know that for a fact because I broke it. This is a 250 spine rib TKO and a 250 spine 4mm. So it's got a wrap on it, so kind of try not to look at that. But if you look at them real close, if you can kind of see that wall thickness difference. Look how much thicker that bottom wall is on the Ultra compared to the rib TKO. It is pretty considerable. It's kind of jacked up lighting here. But anyway, you can kind of see them. Come on, focus again. Whatever. You can see them though. So, pretty thick. I think the only other really 250 shaft that I've seen that probably has a wall thickness like this, or maybe even a 300 shaft, are the Day 6 5mm. I don't remember if it's the HDs or the XDs. I think it's the HDs, but maybe the XD. But they have a very thick wall too, and I got a buddy that shoots them over in Rochester. Jesse Brigantes with Bergie Bowsmith. Super great guy. But he did come out with a K2 Arrow Company too, so obviously I hope he's shooting his own arrows. Been a lot of good results on them, so I'm happy for him. But I know he shot the Day 6 for quite a long time, and I got to be over there a couple times, and I just happened to pick one up and compare him to my 250 spine rib TKO to his, actually it was his 300 spine, and the 300 spine was thicker, noticeably thicker. So, but they are a little bit higher GPI, a little bit, so that's kind of a factor there too. But they're very durable and they're very consistent arrows. So, on that note, kind of got a little off topic on a couple things, but I'm just trying to kind of compare some other stuff to the Ultras. And I think we'll have to do a review later on after I've been shooting them for a while and see what I think about them. But I honestly don't really have any doubts on them, really, because, I mean, Levi Morgan's won a lot of tournaments with Ultras. I think he shoots most of his tournaments with a 23. But aside from that, I mean, I know he shoots the Phantoms for hunting. So I think this last season, I think he was up to 11 or 12 animals with the same arrow. So that says something. I mean, it's not like Levi's shooting 40 pounds and not putting any pressure in an arrow. I mean, he's shooting 70 pounds, maybe more, and he's a pretty long draw. So, I mean, there's a lot of energy behind that arrow, and to shoot that many animals with one arrow, it says a little bit of something. So, take it for what you want, I guess. But on that note, there's a little intro to the Phantoms, and I think they're going to be a very good seller. I think they need to promote the arrow a little bit better. Well, I mean, they promote it well, but I think they need to promote it more, in my opinion, because I think for the consistency of these arrows and how I believe they're probably going to perform is I think they're a I think they could be a really strong competitor to an X10 Parallel Pro, or even the Pro Comps. I mean, the Pro Comps have, I think the Pro Comps have probably one of the two, either X10s or the Pro Comp, but I believe the Pro Comp has won more tournaments than any arrow yet. So that proves itself on how good them arrows are. But I mean, for the consistency of these things and how they're shooting with these spines that they got on here, man, I think they could be in the neck of the woods. I think, once they get the name out a little bit more on these. And I've caught wind of some other really cool things from Ultra that hopefully are coming in the near future, because one of them, if they do drop it out, I'm going to be very excited for it. I'm not going to say. I'm going to be the buster on that one. I'm not going to say what it is because it's not even advertised yet. But it's also not 100% guaranteed, but it's looking very likely that it's going to happen. And if it does, that's probably going to be one of my other options of things. And I think it's probably going to be a very good seller. But on those kind of seller things too is where going back to the GPIs of the Phantoms. They're pretty respectable. Pretty respectable in a 4 mil because 4 mils are generally a little heavier. This is a 250 spine, and they're a 9.8. So, not super light. I believe the RIP TKO, which is a 5 mil, but their GPI on a 250 spine, I believe, is 8, something like that. But these 500s are 6.2, if I think I said that before. So, they're light. You can make a light arrow, super light arrow. And those are good up to a 500 spine is good at an arrow length of 25 inches at 60 pounds. And then it kind of tapers up after that. 26 long arrow at 55, 27 at 50, 28 at 45, and kind of so on. Essentially, I mean, if I was to build an arrow just straight out, I could easily run a 300 spine because I cut my arrows like 26 and a half, which drops me right at the line at 80 pounds between a 350 and a 300. So probably, well, why don't you just shoot a 300 then? Well, because, yes, I'm running 120 grain tip, or the glue ends, but if I like these good enough, and I'm pretty impressed with them, I'm probably going to hunt with them. I'm not overly sold with the Arco system that they had. It's a good system. They use, I believe, they're steel, so that's good. But I really like the arrow or the insert system that my buddy Jesse came out with K2 arrows. He's got, I believe, probably the best 4 mil option on the market. There's 2 other similar systems that Podium makes and Ethics Archery make. They're pretty similar, but nobody touches his price, hands down. And he's got several tests that he's sent me. People hitting steel plates, and with his aluminum set, aluminum post, aluminum sleeve, and it was flawless. So that's that. But he sells them in titanium as well, which that's the route I would go, because I love titanium. It's super strong, and I run titanium components in my hunting arrows on my rips. Ethics Archery titanium hit inserts with titanium iron will collars, and that system has been very durable for me. I can't ask any more out of that system. But with the 4 mil system, obviously you can't run a standard broadhead or field tip inside the shaft because it's too big. So you have to have a sort of a half out, essentially, sticking out, and then your sleeve covers the whole front of the insert and onto the shaft, which his system covers the shaft 11/16 of an inch. So I don't know how far his inserts or the half out stick out. I would assume it's probably 3/8 of an inch or so. So 3/8 and 11/16. I mean, you're looking at 1 inch and 1/8, inch and 3/16 probably, somewhere there. So you got a pretty good size sleeve. You know, it's a nice size. It's not overly long like some. I mean, they're huge, but which is whatever. But it's a nice size system. It covers a good amount of the shaft, so you get really good durability out of it, obviously. And the really cool thing with his system and K2 arrows is he sells components and arrows separate. So you don't have to buy arrows and pay for inserts that you potentially might not even use. So he has that option, which is really cool. And I wish more companies would do that. I said it. I don't care what the company is. They need to do it, right? You buy Ultras, they come with an Arco system. Well, if you're not using the Arco system, you paid for components for no reason. Okay, that's the way I see it. You should be these companies should offer a selection of, I want these shafts with components or without components. And I really like that he did that. So as like this, I don't have to buy arrows to use the components. And so there's a good chance I'm probably going to run his component. And I think it's going to be very well. his full titanium component on a 4mm shaft, I believe, is 90 grains. I'm not sure about the 5mm one, but as far as if I decide to hunt with him, that's probably the system I'll go. And I'll probably continue to run my Day 6 Evo X. That broadhead is sweet. I love it. Shoots really good for a good-sized broadhead. You know, it's pretty decent size. So, but it shoots really well. And on that note, I think I'm kind of running out of stuff to talk about as far as these arrows, other than I am super impressed with all the products that I chose to build these arrows out of, and I'm really happy I did, because I think from here on forward, I'm probably going to be running mini sabers. I'm impressed. I'm going to say it flat out, I've been a pretty fanboy for AE, Max Dells, the hybrid 26s, 23s. I ran the hybrid 23s on my 3D arrows for quite a while. They've been really good for me. So it's kind of a little different to go away from them. I fletched a lot of arrows in those veins. A lot of the AE veins. And this last year I ran the Bony Phantom, or the Bony Alphas, just to play with them. And I was impressed. But one thing I did notice with these, right, you bend that thing over, she still curls a little bit. But not the end of the world, because mine were just fletched, put in my quiver, and shot them at deer. But I mean, they did their job very well. I mean, they steered that broadhead, that Day 6 Evo X, very well. Still waiting for my rep to send me some Pinnacle 2.5s by Ultra. They were supposed to be in this package, and for some reason they didn't end up in it. But we get some of those and play with them, because I want to test them out. I like the look. I like the ideas. They got a good GPI, and I think they would be a good vein. And the way he kind of explained what they were like, I like them. But as far as that goes, these DCAs, I really like them. And honestly, I think this size of the profile, I mean, these mini sabers are half-inch high, I believe, 0.5. Oh, I was wrong. 0.465, so slightly less. And I believe the Super Saber, the bigger, the daddy to them, I think those are like 0.55. So a little over a half-inch tall. So a little bit bigger. So obviously they're going to steer something very well. But honestly, with a good tuned bow, I can see these mini sabers steering a handful of fixed blades pretty well. We'll see how they do on mine, on those big Day 6s. But I think inside whitetail distance, inside 40 yards, I think they'll probably do it. Probably do it pretty good. Maybe long distance, you might need a little bit more. So the Super Saber would probably be a better option. But that's another test down the road. As far as that goes, Iron Archery Outdoors. We got a YouTube and a Facebook channel, or YouTube channel and a Facebook page. Iron Archery Outdoors on both platforms. There'll be a lot more of this stuff coming in, so we'll be doing this. I know I got new unbound archery strings for my bow to put on, so I'm gonna probably do some videos on that. Certain things what you're looking for. It'll be on my AX2 29 right here. So check out those two. Unbound Archery out there in Kansas with Nicholas Dawa. Super awesome dude. That guy's put his hands out on the table a couple times for me and really saved me a couple times. So I can't thank him enough for that. Super awesome dude. And he is the solo string builder of Unbound Archery. So if you get back ordered a little bit, something, don't get overbent about it and be in a big rush and start messaging him and be like, where's my strings at? La, 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 right? The dude grinds himself out and produces amazing strings. So, and I don't care. I mean, I'll order a string now and I'll wait months to get it if I have to, because that's what I'm running, and I'm going to keep running them. And if anything happens, the dude has your back. He is super good at what he does and a very good business owner and represents his company well. So, on that, future videos, keep watching, like and subscribe to the video, and I hope you didn't get drug out too bad and get super bored. It got a little long, a little longer than I was actually intending to be, but that's cool. I'm going to cover a lot of cool stuff, some upcoming stuff, and yeah, that's going to be the neck of that one. So until then, go shoot your bow. It's getting to be that time of year, and weather's starting to warm up a little bit here in Wisconsin, and it's that time of year. So until then, shoot straight, have fun.